Hello, how's it going? It's nice to see all of you. This is usually the point in the day, sort of kind of after lunch, towards the afternoon, where speakers do dumb shit, like they start talking about all the carbohydrates you've eaten and how you might be feeling sleepy, and then they do a thing where they try and make you stand up and do some stretches, and if they're a really kind of facetious Silicon Valley type, then they'll be like, just breathe in and out and enter this space with me. I want to be together with you in this room. I'm not going to do that because that's stupid. What I am going to do is share a trick with you that I learned recently, which I think is incredibly cool. So I am going to need a little bit of audience participation for this, so you're going to have to bear with me. I need you to take your left hand. If you don't know your left and your right, it's that one. It looks like an L. Put your left hand on your right nose. I'm kidding, you only have one nose. Put it on your nose. Take your right hand, put it on your left ear. Now swap them. Swap them again. Swap them faster. Swap, 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 swap. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just learned how to make 100 people punch themselves in the face. That is my trick for you. So just by a show of hands, so I have an idea of who I'm talking to, how many of you know who I am, know what Ghost is, know what I do? Okay, that fucking hurts. Not going to ask that question anymore in future. So my name is John O'Nolan. I'm predominantly a web developer. I've done a bunch of stuff. More notably, I used to work on the WordPress core team back when it looked like this, which was pretty badass. Can't really see it there, but it was really cool. It was WordPress 3.0. These days, I run a different open source project called Ghost, which is a very simple blogging platform, runs entirely on JavaScript instead of on PHP. I'm not going to talk about that. So I've come all the way here from Egypt. Geography lesson, and I'm going to do a little bit of pre-optimization here, because every time I talk to people, especially in the States, and I say I live in Egypt, I come from Egypt, the question's always the same, and it's usually, whoa, do you feel safe? Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, why would that not be okay? And they're like, I heard ISIS go on vacation in Egypt. Is that not dangerous? And no, it's not fucking dangerous. Egypt is a beautiful country. It has some problems in their major cities, maybe due to overthrowing 2 hostile governments, but you know what? There's problems in every major city, whether that be London, whether it be New York, whether it be downtown San Francisco. There's problems everywhere. It's a wonderful place to live, but admittedly, it is really hard to live in a developing country. The abject poverty, which I'm subjected to on a daily basis, with no running water, with no electricity, with just, I basically live in a mud hut with some straw and a donkey who I've named Ralph. And Ralph is not, I mean, he's a nice donkey, but he's not very conversational. And in between the super yachts and the multiple marinas and my lunch breaks where I just go fucking kiteboarding, it's awful. I would recommend that you never, ever visit it. So I live in this little town called El Gouna. Nowhere near Cairo. It's hundreds of miles south of Cairo. Population about 3,000. It looks like this. It's incredible. Highly recommend you visit it. I live there basically because I can. My whole team's distributed. It's very, very low cost of living, very high quality of life, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to talk to you today about the economics of open source. And if that sounds like a fucking boring title to you and you're considering getting up and walking out, I have a clickbait BuzzFeed alternative headline for you just to keep you in your seats, which is, how contributing to WordPress core has made me $1 million in the last 4 years. Bit more interesting. Click. So the reason I'm here is not to talk about Ghost, it's predominantly to talk about WordPress, which makes a change for me, which is fun. So the basis for this talk all started in September 2014 when Matt Mullenweg, your fearless leader, wrote this post called 5 for the Future. And in it, he suggested that every person, developer, business who's building on top of WordPress should be trying to give back about 5% of their time, their development, their resources to WordPress core in an effort to sort of galvanize the WordPress community and keep it growing and all that sort of thing. And there was a really weird response to this post. I thought it was a very good post. It made a lot of sense. But there was this kind of massive backlash in the WordPress core community, and it didn't go down very well with a lot of people. And the main question that kept sort of coming up was, what's in it for me? Why should I do this? I already use WordPress, thereby furthering it throughout the world. So why should I be giving back more of my hard-earned time and doing this, Matt? It doesn't make sense to me. And sadly, there weren't a lot of answers to that. Not a lot of people responded to this backlash from the WordPress community, core contributing community. And I found that very bizarre, because to me, the reasons are incredibly obvious, but apparently this is not something that's widely discussed or accepted. So in this talk, I want to try and answer that question. I have three main reasons why I think giving 5% of your time or more is in the interests of absolutely everything. So first and foremost, contributing to WordPress core is hands down the greatest investment I've ever made in my entire career. I got taught to code and taught to develop by the best developers in the world on one of the biggest products in the world for free. And in addition, I got three pretty incredible things out of doing it. Number one, it turns out putting my work is used by about 100 million people and powers 23% of the web on your resume is pretty fucking useful when you apply for a job, do a startup, or talk to investors. You can't get that anywhere else. It works pretty well. Number two, you get a competitive advantage to know exactly where WordPress core is going and where it's going next. And that's crazy to me. Like, if you think, how many millions of dollars would people pay to know what Apple is about to do next, or to know what Google is about to do next, or to know what any major enterprise company is going to do next? But by using WordPress and then by contributing to it, you know every single detail of what API is on the roadmap, what's coming up next. You can be so far ahead of the competition for nothing. Reason number three, you get bigger clients and you can double your prices because by contributing to core, you now have swagger. And swagger is priceless. Money cannot buy any of these things. And yet, by contributing your time to WordPress, you get them for free. I find it very bizarre that this is not something which is more publicly recognized. The amount of benefit you can get by putting a little bit of time into contributing to WordPress core is simply unbelievable. You really have to think of it as an investment. You're not giving away 5% of your time, because the 5% or more that you choose to put in, WordPress repays you many, 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 many times over. Now, when I first wrote about this general subject, I left a comment sort of against this backlash on a blog post by Brian on post status. This is my aside. If you don't know about poststatus.com, you should check it out, because it's a really, really, really good website. If you think of WP Tavern as Fox News, Post Status is like the Wall Street Journal. My infomercial is now complete. So there was a comment which I wrote this comment covering some of these basic points, and Mike Schinkel replied to me immediately. And I like Mike Schinkel. Mike Schinkel, is he here? Mike, are you here? He's not here. Mike Schinkel asks really difficult questions, and some people don't like it. They think his questions are too difficult, but I like it because he makes you think. I call it a Schinkel bomb. He comes in and he's like, what's my question? It's a Schinkel bomb. And you really have to think about your response, otherwise he just kills you. And his question was, are these typical results? Do you really get such a big return, like I have, from contributing to WordPress core? Or is this just something that's kind of a one-off? And there's a lot of different ways you can approach the answer to that and think about the different ways in which it is or isn't replicable. But I think the recipe that, after thinking about this for quite a long time, that I've come up with is very, very simple, which is go up to any WordPress core contributor and ask them one question, consisting of two words: how's business? And what you will find is that there is a very, very, very strong correlation between core contributors and their business and the size of the clients they have. It's not really much of a coincidence, if we're being honest about it, that the big agencies who have the biggest clients also tend to have the most staff contributing directly to core. So that's my measure of whether or not this is replicable and whether you should consider this as a viable option. So back when I got into contributing to core, I think it was just before WordPress 3.0, end of 2009. It didn't even quite look like this yet. It wasn't that clean. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was a freelancer. I was building websites with WordPress, some themes. And I thought, crazy me, it would be a good idea, having my business based on WordPress, to learn a little bit more about how WordPress core worked. Bizarre. So I found a bug one day. There was an error message popping up in the wrong place, something to do with permalinks. And I thought, I want to report this bug. I'm going to learn how to report a bug. And in 2009, this was not a friendly process. This is how Track looks now. It was a lot worse back then. But there was this really friendly young guy. He was about 20 at the time, very new, very bubbly, and he'd been working on WordPress for, I think, a month and a half. And his name was Andrew Nason. And he walked me through this whole process. Like, here's the bug, let's find it, let's create a ticket on track, let's write a patch, and let's get it into core. And he kind of onboarded me as a contributor with all sorts of enthusiasm that was just awesome. And he dealt with my frustrations and questions and kind of got me into this whole thing. And so that's how I kind of started contributing to core, and I found that there was this design group, and they worked on the UI, and it was, at the time it was brand new, there was almost no one there, so I just started doing that and following the Make WordPress blogs, getting involved, seeing what I could do, and then this really strange thing happened. The more I was contributing to core and getting involved in the community, particularly the core contribution community, the more I would get into contact with companies who wanted to talk to core contributors and looking for work. And I started noticing that my client base was going from local businesses and suddenly growing into a very different kind of business. A very different kind of business. And over the course of about 6 months, my average client project budget went from about $5,000 per project, it's about a month-long project, to about $75,000 per project, in a very, very short space of time. And yes, working with these bigger clients and their bigger budgets and their bigger projects with more complexity was very stressful, but somehow I managed to find a way to deal with that stress. And that was really what got me through it. So if you accept all of this as a given, and you accept the premise that this is something that's possible, and you're wondering, okay, so like, how does this work? If I want to contribute, I know there's these make blogs and the track thing and all that shit, but what do I actually need to do? Because it's quite tricky, and there's some things you have to sort of feel your way around. So I'm going to give you I think the 3 most important lessons that I had from watching people enter and leave WordPress core, and the things which really seem to make a difference for people getting involved. So first is show up and listen. Could also be rewritten as shut up and listen. There's an old quote from the West Wing, which I use far too much, which goes, decisions are made by people who show up. You don't get to complain about things that are happening in core if you don't show up. It's not a democratic process, but it is an open process, and it is available for anyone to participate in if they choose to. So the first thing is to show up and to listen and to see what happens, because you don't know the context of everything that's going on. And I see a lot of people, or I used to see a lot of people who would come in and say, I want to make this change, we should move this button from here to here, and someone would say, no, and then they go, fuck you guys then, and then leave. And the problem is that you don't know the context. There is so much institutional knowledge that is lost when you just pop into an IRC meeting and start saying something. Nason, in his talk earlier today, took, an hour to explain 2 years of history for a single bug. Now, if you were to walk into core and say, why is strict mode not on for MySQL? He can't give you a personal 1-hour talk on why that's the case. But you have to take a step back, show up, and listen and start to absorb how this whole process works. That's, I think, probably one of the biggest differentiating factors between people who contribute to core and succeed and the people who sort of come in, get angry, and leave again, is the willingness to show up and listen and start to understand the context and the history of all the reasons why WordPress is the way it is. Because it's very easy to say WordPress code is a mess, and it's very hard to actually intellectualize that and start to understand why it is the way it is. The second thing is to show up consistently, which means basically to come back again and again and again. A lot of people come in, very passionate for 1 week, and then they're gone. And this point essentially involves commitment. You need to show up week after week after week, block that time out in your schedule. When I started contributing to core, I would have an alarm on my phone for the weekly UI meeting, and no matter where I was, whether I was at home, on the toilet, in the office, anywhere. Once in my car, I pulled over on the side of the road, put on my hazard lights just so I could fucking IRC in and be like, what's up, bitches? Let's do this. I'm ready. You have to show up. You have to make the effort to be there and to participate. And that's how you earn trust, by being someone who's there consistently again and again and again. The more you participate, the more they start to get to know your name, the more you start to earn that trust. Now, if showing up consistently is how you earn trust, then getting things done is how you earn respect. And that means getting things done that WordPress core needs, not that you need for your personal agenda. So the classic example that I usually use of this is in WordPress 3.1, the admin bar. came for the first time. So the admin bar is the thing, when you're logged in, you're on the front end of your site, admin bar's on the top. That didn't exist before WordPress 3.1. It was a top-down decision. Matt basically just went, hey, admin bar, WordPress.com, that looks good, let's do it on .org. And that was it. That was the whole process. So there was no kind of committee deciding this. It just happened. And I didn't like it. I thought it sucked. I thought it was pretty shit, to be honest. And so I was having this discussion with Nathan one day. I said, Nathan, this admin bar is a piece of junk. It not only is it generally a flawed concept, but it's going to break everything, and I'll tell you why. Because the CSS for the admin bar conflicts with CSS and themes, it's completely unscoped, and the CSS and themes is going to conflict with the unscoped admin bar. So basically, they're going to have horrible babies, and everything's going to fucking explode. Now, Nathan, quite used to dealing with my temperament by this point, said one very simple sentence. So help me fix it then. And that's the point where I realized I just had to step up and put the project's needs ahead of my own, and spent the next, I think it was a good 4 weeks, scoping and important declarationing everything in the admin bar, so that by the time it shipped, even though I didn't like the feature, nothing broke, and 3.1 was a very stable release for the admin bar. And the willingness to do that is, again, what can often separate someone as a good contributor and a not-so-involved contributor, is the willingness to do what the project needs to be done. So those are the three biggest things. Something I find very interesting that I learned about quite recently is how the path of a core contributor matches up quite nicely with this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of basic human needs. So Abraham Maslow wrote this in 1943 while studying motivation of people and how people get to different levels of motivation and achievement and all the various sorts of things. And so he created this pyramid. We start at the bottom. So as humans, first of all, we have physiological needs, which is the air you breathe, the food you eat, the water you drink, basic shelter, that sort of stuff. If you do not have those, you have no focus on anything else. Those are the first things you need before you can begin to think about anything else at all. After that, you have safety and security needs. Am I financially sound? Am I physically sound? Is everything going to be okay? If you can't solve those, you can't go any further. After that, you have your social needs. So you need some form of interaction. You need friends, you need family, for want of a better word, you need love. Once you've achieved those social needs, you can then move on to your esteem needs, which is the respect of your peers, achievement, those sorts of things. And the final point in this pyramid is then self-actualization, which is a very obnoxious way of saying creativity, problem-solving, spontaneity. And the people who have those first 4 basic levels of needs solved are then able to get into that creative level of thinking. This was in 1943. Obviously, Reddit rewrote it for 2015. We just need internet. Everything else is whatever. But I'm also going to rewrite it or modify it slightly because there's 2 problems with this. First of all, the words don't fit inside the fucking pyramid. That really bothers me. Second of all, Maslow, in his later years, actually criticized his own work because he said the pyramid implies that there's a top step and that there's no further to go. But even Maslow said that there's a step beyond self-actualization, which is self-transcendence. So there is no top, there's just more levels. Self-transcendence is when you go beyond your own creativity and problem solving, and you're now looking at what effect can I have on the world? How can I help other people? Maybe it's spirituality, some kind of higher cause beyond self is what then comes next. It's very interesting. And it's interesting how it applies to all sorts of different situations. So I'm going to take one example. We'll call it Andrew Nason's hierarchy of WordPress and look at his progression through WordPress core. Works bizarrely well. So Andrew Nason was at college one day, and he needed a blogging platform, it's a completely true story, for his college newspaper. So he had physiological needs of a blogging platform. He found WordPress. He became a WordPress user. Now, once he'd established that WordPress wasn't going to go away, it was a pretty stable platform, he became a WordPress developer. Once he started to get to know the community and he started to have interactions with friends, people in core, then he became a WordPress contributor. And once he'd established the respect of his peers and the confidence in his own abilities, he became a WordPress committer. And then once he had this new level to sort of plan where WordPress could go next and have that creativity and that problem-solving level of work, he became a WordPress lead, or the WordPress lead for quite a while. And then, of course, he went that extra step beyond. In February 2015, as we all know, he talks about he now works for the United States Digital Service, an incredibly noble achievement. Is Nathan here? There he is. Let's give him a round of applause. Which I think is incredible. When I met Nathan, he was saying to me how he basically didn't know PHP until he started contributing to WordPress, and now he's a wizard who works for the White House. Now, I don't know exactly what Nathan's first day at the White House was like. I'm not sure. It wasn't documented, okay? They didn't follow him around with a fucking camera. But I like to think it went a little something like this. Mr. Obama, sir? He's not Mexican. Mr. Obama, sir? Yes, Nathan. I want to make you the word president. Oh, Nathan, we use Drupal. He's so fucking shocked he just grew a beard. He's like, what? How did this happen? All my life's been leading up to this moment. Oh. It's great. It's not true. It's not true. Nathan's great. So I want to leave you with two closing thoughts. And if you remember nothing else from this presentation, from this talk, please take away these 2 points. The first one, get that fucking troll off the screen. The first one is very much directed at the current WordPress core team and contributors. WordPress needs core evangelists. It really does. It needs people to, to get people more excited about contributing to core. When that post was published about 5 for the future, everyone basically stood around after the backlash going, 5%, you, 5, I don't know. It's strange. And it's fucking weird that you have to have a guy from Africa on another open source project fly over to Las Vegas to tell you how awesome it is to contribute to WordPress core. There needs to be more core evangelists who, maybe in not my terms, financial terms, but who tell people how awesome it is to contribute to WordPress and get people more excited about doing it. The second point is to everyone else, which is that I think now is the best time ever to get involved in contributing to core. So if you're wondering, like, did I miss the boat? Were the golden years around like 3.0 area? Is it really hard to get involved now? No, it's more easy than ever. And also, this is a completely made-up graph that I've invented out of nothing, but I would suggest that you are on the precipice of greatness. Because a little after that orange arrow is when the WordPress API happens. And at that point, the stack goes from themes, plugins, and websites to API and applications. And it's going to be an absolutely incredible time for WordPress that I couldn't be more excited about. Even at Ghost, we use WordPress for tons of stuff, and we're excited to see what this does. So I would encourage absolutely everyone to get involved, help out, see what you can do, because I learned more in my 2 years of contributing to WordPress than at any point in my entire career. Everything that I've managed to do since then has been as a result of being involved in WordPress core, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. Thank you.